What's up, y'all? One Piece One Life here, and guys, today has been a great day. Not only have I not had an exorbitant amount of classes, but I just came back from a comedy showcase. More specifically, I'm in a comedy class, and me and my friends just showcased these stand-ups that we've been working on throughout the entire semester to the crowd. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I was funny. I didn't make any One Piece jokes, although now thinking about it, if people know me as the One Piece guy, I probably should get on that. A whole video of just cringy One Piece jokes? Let's see if that will do well. But you know, the show was called Jokes for Justice because we're not just trying to, make people kiki. We also need to talk about some real stuff, real governmental problems. Problems that the government would not want us to actually talk about. And you know what else the government doesn't like to be talked about? Oppression. And that's true for both our world and, more pertaining to this video, the One Piece world. Because see, no matter how you look at it, oppression is real in the One Piece world. It's rampant. Whether it's from the pirates or the world government, people feel like they can't do anything, they can't breathe, and that's why pirates who are breaking the mold, like Luffy, are actually being seen as problems. But then when you stop and think, and you pit those two things against each other, pirates and the world government, which one actually seems to be the bad guy at the end of the day? Because see, both Imu, the shadow ruler of the world government, and Blackbeard, perhaps Luffy's greatest pirate rival, both have astounding amounts of evidence that one can use to justify why they believe one of either of these options will be One Piece's final villain. And I want to go through real quick just a few of the ones that I found today, and then my conclusion to who the actual final villain of One Piece is going to be. Because I was leaning one way for a long time, but pendulum has switched, shifted, swung. But before we get into figuring out who Luffy is gonna have to beat up at the end of the story, y'all, please do something for me. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this every week. We're currently at almost 720. It's getting insane. I have nothing but love for all of you who continue to show me support, and you know what? Show me more support by sharing everything around. And also guys, y'all, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the CSY page that me and my boys have started. I know we've kept saying, oh, we're almost hitting 5K, special project at 5K. We're actually almost at 5K, 4.8. Don't miss the fab, I'm telling you. Now, when you ask somebody the question, who the final villain will be in their opinion, Emo or Blackbeard, they have to give you substantial reason. And usually they'll give you one of two things, which is either already set up plot points or plot points that haven't been set up yet, but that makes sense because it's the themes of the story. So with that in mind, we're gonna start with Emu. Now, Emu falls immediately into the thematic storytelling argument that I was saying, because the thematic storytelling between Luffy and Emu is literally one that has set up the entire world system, especially with what we know now about Luffy being the sun god Nika. All throughout the world, in countless places, countless islands, we see a recurring theme of oppression and silencing. I'm not gonna lie to you, literally every arc in the series to some extent or another has a core or at least background theme of trying to save a population, free them from a tyrannical ruler or a tyrannical system. I mean, just think about it. Arlong Park, Dressrosa, Alabasta, Wano, Fishman Island, Skypiea, Thriller Bark. Like, I really could go on and on, but I challenge you to find me a One Piece arc that doesn't in some way have to do with freedom of expression, freeing people from oppression. I mean, that's why there are literally memes of Luffy being like, so here's the exchange we're gonna do. You give me meat. I give you freedom for your entire nation and way of life. That's why people say that East Blue feels so villain of the wiki, because the Straw Hats are literally going to an island, beating up the bad guy who's oppressing said island, and then dipping. And it's literally a cycle on and on again. And then the only thing that's changed now is that as that cycle's continued, the world has continued to expand. And Luffy is heralded as the symbol of this freedom so many times throughout the story. I feel like you genuinely have to be either intentionally or accidentally ignorant and blind to miss it. The second reason people usually give for why they believe Emu will be the final villain is kind of tied to the first one. And that's just that corruption in the world government and the celestial dragons is literally been perpetrated throughout the story since we were introduced to the concept of the world government. While Luffy's first defeat of an opponent may have been a pirate in Alvida, the very first time that Luffy ever liberated an entire island and an entire populace is with the liberation of Shell's Town, run by a corrupt marine. Bearing in mind, the Marines are under the thumb of the world government. Time and time again, what we've seen through our protagonist's eyes is that the government is the root cause of all of the bad things that's really happening in this world. They're the reasons that slavery exists exists. They're the reason that racism exists. They're the reason that exorbitant taxes that the majority of places can't pay exist. Even pirates, because there are multiple examples of pirates who only got to where they are right now because the world government as a system failed them. Doflamingo, Kaido, Big Mom, Mihawk, Kuma, Law, Boa, Jinbei, and the rest of his entire race. Need I go on? I mean, I think that the fact that 2 out of your 3 true pillars of strength in the Marines, in Fujitora and Kizaru, are both having second thoughts about what this system is and are threatening to leave the system, that should say something. And you see everything that I just laid out in front of you? Imu is the shadow ruler of the entire thing. I'ma say it again for y'all in the back. The shadow ruler of the entire world. I mean, this has to be the pinnacle of it, from the simple fact that you are enslaving, controlling, manipulating the entire globe. I don't think people understand the scope because, again, this is a whole world that we're talking about. We're not talking about just a few places. We're not even talking about the majority of places. And they're manipulating it so well, a lot of the people don't even recognize it as manipulation. One Piece is literally a dystopian world. Try and prove me wrong. You can't, because we've literally been told that in the story. There were literally 2 great cataclysms before the current era that led to the current era. Now, another reason that people will commonly cite for Imu being the final villain is because it seems like at this stage, they're currently perhaps the strongest character alive today, and who knows, maybe even the 3rd strongest character right after Joy Boy and maybe Ryuma. Their demon powers are far beyond the comprehension and regular scope of what we know to be Devil Fruit powers, or just the power system in general of this world. The simple fact that he's literally in control of the Gorosei's power when the majority of the Gorosei have been kind of portrayed as even more competent than the Yonko, that should also say enough. And I don't want to get into the who's stronger debates, Kaido or Workery, that's not what this video is about. But I'm just saying, for people who are supposed to be comparable and he has them shitting their pants, it would also allow the Will of D to come into play. Since it's explained multiple times that those who bear the Will of D are the enemies of the gods, it just makes sense that that is naturally one of the final climactic moments of One Piece. Because you literally have Imu setting himself up as a god of the world, and it's very, very strong parallels to Doflamingo in Dressrosa and God Enel in Skypiea. It would also tie into the revolutionary story. Putting agenda aside, the fact that we have yet to see Dragon make any moves when we know that Dragon is going to be strong as hell, the fact that we haven't seen the Revs take the offensive to the government when we know that that is their entire goal and their whole system is based around dethroning the gods of this world. I mean, we literally have Sabo turning countries en masse against the government, and Oda keeps making it a point to be like, oh yeah, remember these? This is the 8-Nation Revolution. It was important. Though, to be fair, I don't know why. I still don't like Sabo. Now, from the way I talked about Imu, it may seem like I've already had my foregone conclusion. But let's be fair to Blackbeard and look at his arguments. Now, first things first, there is an interesting thought or ideology that I think I first saw circulating on Mr. Morge's channel, but it essentially details that the reason that Blackbeard can be put as the final villain of One Piece is because the story of One Piece isn't aiming towards answering the question as to whether the dawn of the world can happen or not, but rather what the dawn of the world will look like when it does happen. And essentially it's saying, yeah, the government is going to be torn down, but when it does, the final fight, the final conflict of the series is actually going to be about determining which path to take. A society that's chaotic, evil, and anarchist, or a society that's more communal, social, liberalist. And fair enough, I'll grant it to you, that is a pretty interesting idea. Another point people will use to bring up the Blackbeard argument is by saying that at the end of the day, One Piece is a pirate manga about pirates, so it makes sense for the final battle to be a battle against pirates. Well, to that I say, who's to say Imu wasn't a pirate back in the day? You know what I'm saying? We just don't know. Like, remember what Doflamingo said. History is written by the victors. All I'm saying is we don't know Imu's backstory. There's a completely fair chance that they could have been a pirate, one, because they aligned themselves with the kingdoms or whatever, and then wrote themselves onto the Grand Throne. It's also fair to point out that his devil fruit of the Yami Yami no Mi is literally a symbolic representation of the darkness that the world is currently going through, waiting for the dawn. But Imu essentially has this, but on a much larger scale. Because you have his shadow demonic powers, but those can also be shared throughout his subordinates and make them stronger as well. Now, Blackbeard is also the opposite, but at the same time the parallel to Luffy in many ways. Which, to be fair, does make him more compelling in terms of him actually having a personality. Or, if you subscribe to this theory, multiple personalities, down to the literal parallel panel of one of them saying they really like this thing while the other saying they really hate it. And then a lot of people will think, well, of course, you have to think about it also in terms of their fight. Luffy has a really strong haki and a really powerful devil fruit. He seems like he's reached the heights of where he can go with his devil fruit as of right now, but his haki has still not reached the ceiling that Kaido kept talking about. But then boom, what happens? Blackbeard strolls through with the Yami Yami no Mi, which has an ability to turn off others' abilities. So with Luffy unable to use his devil fruit, that's going to be the thing that pushes him to the heights of haki. And with haki being one of the most important themes, one of the most important just aspects of this world, it will make sense for a lot of people to say that the haki bloom battle is going to be the one where Luffy finalizes everything. But I'd say two things to that. One, there's no reason why that can't happen and then he uses all that he's learned to go and fight the world government. And then two is the fact that the fight against Blackbeard would mostly just be Luffy versus Blackbeard. I guess if you really want to extrapolate it, it may be a crew battle, but also Blackbeard's crew is horrible, so no one cares. But the battle against Imu is an upward struggle against the entire world government, the entire concept of the world government, which would also, by the way, tie into Luffy declaring the entire world his enemy when he was saving Robin when he had Sogeking shoot down the flag. Another thing that people will say for Blackbeard is, oh, well, what about the Ace thing? There's a whole Ace vendetta because Blackbeard is the reason that Ace was captured and eventually killed. Now, while that is partly true, there's two things I need to say. For one, in Luffy's eyes, he associates Ace's death with Akainu way more than he associates it with Blackbeard. Yeah, in Impel Down, he did have the jet bazooka of rage, but really, when Akainu's name is brought up, that's when the scar that Luffy receives starts aching and he remembers all those times. And for another, Ace's death was Ace's fault. Yeah, I said it. I've even seen people try and say that Luffy and Blackbeard together will team up, take down the world government, and then after the team up, they'll turn on each other and fight for the end. And I'm not gonna lie, as interesting as that would be, I just can't see how it would happen. Like, I'm trying to imagine the setup for that to happen, and I don't see a way. Because even for just other reasons, Luffy just does not vibe with Blackbeard. He knows that Blackbeard is one of the people he needs to defeat anyway on his road to becoming Pirate King, so why would he team up with him? Now, there is one actually interesting and intriguing plot point that just came up with Blackbeard recently as to how I could actually see that this whole thing shakes down and actually makes sense for him to be the final villain. And that is his whole plan with Kobe and then now Garp being used as something, a bargaining chip with the government. Because remember, Blackbeard said that his goal is that he wants to be recognized as an official kingdom, which implies, based on his past track records, that he's going to try to infiltrate the world government from within to maybe bring it down or place himself at the top. And then especially tying this in with the fact that he's essentially trying to be king of the world in the same way that Zebek is, and especially the fact that he has strong ties to Zebek. Genuinely, no argument for me on that point. But yo, with even all of that being said, I think I must still have to give my vote to Imu personally. See, before Wano, I would have said that Blackbeard definitely has a very strong argument. I probably would have put them at 50-50. But ever since we got into Wano, Oda has been absolutely stacking up the world government side. In Wano, we learned of the SSG that's literally supposed to be so strong that they felt okay in dissolving the warlord system, which we would then get confirmation of in Egghead when we saw that the Seraphim are absolutely disgusting. We learned that the Gorosei and Imu themselves are actually combatants as well. They also got York, one of the few Vegapunks left, so with a genius of that caliber on their side, they give her time and money, she's going to be able to create them all sorts of crazy weapons. Oh, and speaking of crazy weapons, they also have a giant sky laser that can one-shot nuke entire islands. And then to top it all off, in Elbaf, we're introduced to the Gods Knights, another extra faction of ridiculous fighting power with powers that seemingly can rival even the strongest of pirates. Like, they literally have evil Shanks and a guy who can make any dream a reality. How is Blackbeard topping that? I'm sorry, the whole Blackbeard as the final villain thing to me just doesn't seem to fit the story anymore, because the story of One Piece has ballooned way past just pirates versus pirates. I think that since Oda keeps saying that we're gonna be seeing fighting across different sections of the ocean, we're definitely going to see Blackbeard set up to be perhaps Luffy's greatest pirate rival. But I just don't think that that's where it stops. Again, One Piece is literally a story about censorship, erasure, racism, control over others, as well as a story about how Luffy, bringing the dawn of the world, is going to overcome all of these things and bring in a new era, a new day. And if that still didn't convince you, all I'm going to say again is warrior of liberation. You can't get much deeper stakes than trying to liberate the entire globe. But who do y'all think is the final villain of One Piece? Emu? Blackbeard? A new power we've never heard of before? The dead spirit of rocks coming back? Gaimon? Make sure you let me know your thoughts and more in the comments below. Now that is going to be the end of the video, y'all. But before we go, like it, subscribe, share it around with all your friends who love the series. Or anime and manga in general. As y'all know, I'm trying to build a community, but I need your help to do it. Well, that's going to be all from me. I'll catch you on the next one. And always remember, One Piece, one life. Y'all think it's any stand-up comics in the One Piece world? Like, who would you point to and say like, okay, wait, I actually want to hear what they have to say. I bet they can make funny jokes. Cause you want to say Brook, but like, I'm sorry, his thing is music. I don't think that a lot of Brook's jokes are actually funny in context. Like from a meta perspective, I can appreciate it, but I feel like if I was actually living in the world, I would just find him kind of cringy. Like, why is there a skeleton up here just telling us facts about him being a skeleton? Like, we can see this, whereas you can't. Yeah, that's my own school joke.